Since we finished all the Metal Gear Solid games in the marathon, one of the sub redemptions was to read In the Darkness of Shadow Moses. So that is what we'll be doing. It's a pretty long book. I've never read a book on stream, so this will be a first time for me. I dedicate this book to the casualties of Shadow Moses as well as to those who suffered the tyranny of nuclear weapons, and to Richard Ames. Nastasha Romanenko. Prologue. Shadow Moses Island. Even the local fishermen rarely venture to this outcropping of land. Yet the incident of all incidents took place on this remote island, north of the Alaska Fox Islands. A number of confirmed facts undermine the U.S. government's denial of the entire affair. Among those are the sudden appearance of the Ohio-class nuclear submarine, the USS Discovery, off Shadow Moses, far away from its designated position, and an official record that shows that a squadron of 6 fully armed F-117 Nighthawks departed from Galena Air Force Base for Alaska, a scant 16 hours later. Another possibly related event, an E-3C AWACS, I don't know what that is, on emergency development to the Alaska area, is said to have had none other than the National Security Advisor Jim Houseman as its onboard VIP. Oh, okay. AWACS. Yeah, AWACS. That's a plane, right? AWACS? Yeah. It's yep. 300 pages? What exactly happened on Shadow Moses? There was no lack of rumors to account for the series of unusual military activities. An armed insurgent, a coup attempt by a branch of the military, and other theories made its way to the public table. I can state unequivocally that none of them came close to the truth. What actually took place was the single greatest terrorist incident in modern history. It was an act of political violence on a scale the world has never seen. A blow that threatened to send the Damocles sword, I don't know what that is, of nuclear warfare into a freefall. Most significant of all, the attack stemmed from the several so-called black projects, which the United States government had been conducting in top secret, away from public scrutiny. I have in my hand 2 optical discs, one containing the entire record of the event that took place on Shadow Moses Island, that fateful day, the takeover of a nuclear weapons disposal plant by an armed group. Other key points of this incredible records are the identification of the perpetrators as the government's own genetically enhanced next-generation commandos and a covert special forces squad, Foxhound, with a long, dark history of secret intervention. The existence of one Metal Gear Rex, a bipedal nuclear-capable tank whose development was one of the most classified projects of all time. The discovery of a massive government conspiracy. The activities of a former Foxhound operative who single-handedly took on this daunting situation and averted the crisis. A man who is known only by his code name, Solid Snake. The other remaining disc holds the detail of the Project Foxdie, a massive cover-up which the United States government planned and executed in order to prevent exposure. There are, after all, forces within the military. Hold on. Forces within the U.S. government who seek to maintain the military power structure established in the last century and will not hesitate to resurrect the terrors of nuclear arms in order to achieve that end. My intent is to expose their activity and the entirety of the Shadow Moses affair through this book. Only then can we hope to free the coming generation from the damnosa heredities of the 20th century's nuclear arms race. AWACS is a plane with lots of radars and stuff. Yeah, I looked it up. It has that giant dome on it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen it outside of that. But now I have a better understanding of what he means when he's coming by, because Campbell says in Metal Gear Solid 1, he's coming by AWACS. So I looked up from the mass documents at the sound of the doorbell. On the monitor in front of me was a half-finished status report on the resurgence of nuclear arms development in a certain Middle East state. Zanzibar land? The United Nations Special Commission had officially requested a survey by the UN's weapon inspectors and had been refused entry. Tensions were once again running high in the Gulf. As a military analyst whose specialty was nuclear arms, I was under contract from a think tank to produce a study of the situation. It was due the day after the next, and the interruptions were definitely not welcome. I grounded out my cigarette in the ashtray and stepped out of the study. All the visitors to my house are checked via a surveillance camera and then let in through a heavy gate. The property itself is surrounded by a high wall. It may seem like overkill for a beach community, but security is a necessity in greater Los Angeles, if only to keep out the legions of swimsuit-clad tourists. However, there was nobody to be seen at the gate. It was either a prank or the camera was malfunctioning. Reluctant to investigate but feeling unsettled nonetheless, I headed back to the study and sat back down at the computer to continue my work. Just then, somebody spoke behind me. You always were a little careless. I spun around, kicking my chair over. There was a man standing at the entrance of the study, slouching in a well-tailored suit. Richard! He caught my eye and grinned, ignoring my surprise. He strolled into the room, gazing around at the pile of books and papers. And still as disorganized as ever. He shrugged his shoulders in a familiar gesture, triggering a wave of memories laced with bitterness. Richard Ames and I were married once upon a time. We were both young and working for the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. We spent much of our brief marriage in disagreement over virtually every issue. And just as I came to realize that our union was a mistake, he disappeared from my life. A while later, I received paperwork for a divorce from his lawyer. There was a generous alimony offer involved, which I refused. Not only did I find the thought of owning him anything intolerable, I also wanted to prove that he was not the only one who could walk away without an explanation. The divorce was finalized without us ever meeting face to face, and we were legally strangers once again. In the 5 years since, I quit the DIA and became a freelance analyst. I had not seen Richard at all, nor even heard about his whereabouts. How did you get in here? I demanded. After all, admitting to scale the wall or force the front door would immediately trigger the security system. But he refused to be ruffled. If you're going to use a flimsy lock like that, you may as well not bother. I'd recommend a more professional security setup. Does the term breaking and entering mean anything to you, Richard? You know law isn't my field of expertise. He replied nimbly and peered over my shoulder at the report on the computer display. Radio Estoid Project Separator Uranium 235 production feasible for high speed gas centrifuge. This must be about the Middle East nuke development. Looks like your career is going well. That's great. I pushed Richard aside and asked him flatly, "What do you want?" He took a step back and regarded me with a slightly mischievous smile. "What? You afraid I came back to give us another chance?" He let the silence linger as if to relish my reaction. Then suddenly, formal, he continued, "It's an official request from the DIA." He placed the folder on the desk. "I'm asking for your cooperation as a member of NES. NES stands for the Nuclear Emergency Search Team, a group that operates on the Department of Energy budget. It was established in 1974 to provide technological support to the FBI in areas of intelligence, investigation and site securement, damage containment, and medical response during incidents involving criminal threats of nuclear weapons use. Call it a band of experts of nuclear terrorism, if you will. NES consists of independently contracted scientists from federally funded research entities like Los Alamos, and Lawrence Livermore, and the military specialists from groups dealing with nuclear arms issues. I happen to be one of the latter group. Richard was opening the file folder. You've heard of Shadow Moses Island, I assume. I nodded assent, and I had indeed heard of the remote place north of Alaska's Fox Island. Though it was hardly public knowledge, the island was home to a nuclear weapons disposal facility. According to the terms of the START II Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the total number of tactical nuclear warheads owned by the U.S. and Russia were reduced to somewhere between 3,000 and 3,500 in the later decades of the 20th century. The outcome was a massive new number of warheads in need of disposal when there was already a shortage of storage space for radioactive material. As a result, warheads had been kept somewhere before they could be dismantled and their radioactive elements extracted for a long time storage. The Shadow Moses facility was the answer. It was the crystallization of the forces of nuclear proliferation and political engineering that gives preference to delaying a solution rather than producing one, and a hidden military agenda to preserve what it could of the old nuclear stockpile. Richard took out several photographs from the folder and handed them to me. They all appear to be satellite captures of the nuclear weapons disposal plant on Shadow Moses Island, perhaps acquired from the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office. There was multiple human figures around the building structure. Richard broke the silence. The disposal plant was seized by terrorists. I looked up sharply at the news, but his next words left me speechless. And the ringleaders are Foxhound members. An irregular team of best commandos the military has to offer, armed with cutting-edge technology. That was Foxhound, the best of the best, and completely unknown to the public. they abstinently serve, abstainably serve. Their function was to intervene in the kind of low intensity conflicts the U.S. could not officially touch. They were the shadow soldiers of numerous regional conflicts and civil wars, shaping history with sabotage, selective assassination, and other covert acts of war. Richard had more to say. It's not just Foxhound that's involved in this. Foxhound was conducting a joint exercise with the Next Generation Special Forces, and they are part of the takeover as well. The Next Generation Special Forces is an aggressive anti-terrorism squad developed to counter acts of political violence, inducing weapons of mass destruction such as nuclear, biological, and chemical weapon methods. The combat philosophy is derived from the ones used for the Force 21. Most of the recruits came from a mercenary background. The men are intensely trained in a virtual environment, and their combat capabilities is estimated to be well beyond even those of Delta Force or the Night Stalkers. While the government categorically denies the accusation, there are persistent rumors that the men have been genetically enhanced to increase tactical advancement. It's so funny though. This is so funny because they talk about how the Next Generation Special Forces, the you know, like they're these advanced soldiers. Yeah, when you play Metal Gear Solid 1, they're so stupid. I hate, like, they're like, huh? What was that noise? Huh? And they're over here saying, like, they're better than Delta Force and everything. It's just so funny to me in seeing how they actually are in a gameplay point of view. Let me get some water. Foxhound and the next generation special forces. They were without a doubt the most skilled group of fighting men produced by the U.S. Hold on one sec. I forgot. There we go. My reading skills have gone up since the Final Fantasy days. Thanks. Foxhound and the Next Generation Special Forces. They were without a doubt the most skilled group of fighting men produced by the United States, and they had hijacked a nuclear arsenal. Richard had more bad news. There are also civilian hostages involved. Two of them happen to be the DARPA chief, Donald Anderson, and Kenneth Baker, the presidents of Armtech, Inc., the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. Is that what DARPA stands for? The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. I actually never knew what that stood for. Is the research satellite of the United States Defense Department, charged with planning and leading the development of new weapons technology. AT happens to be one of the top 3 defense contractors in the country. There are no such things as coincidence, especially the kind that involve the head of these two organizations meeting in a out-of-the-way nuclear weapons disposal plant. I decided to be direct with Richard. There was something going on in that disposal facility, I take it. Let me guess. A demonstration of a new weapon? How should I know? Shadow Moses is also a prime Northern Light observation locale, you know? Whatever Richard knew, he wasn't telling. But his evasiveness only confirmed my suspicions. Whatever was going on, this was no ordinary terrorist incident. With that in mind, I moved on to another point. What are their demands? They want a body. Not just any corpse, though. They want Foxhound's founder, Big Boss, legendary soldier, the best fighting man of the 20th century. The whole works. You know, it's like, I understand, like, it's, man, like, we see Big Boss survive Metal Gear Solid 3, right? But he gets his ass kicked throughout the entire thing, right? He loses his eyeball. He gets his ass destroyed by the boss countless times, eventually is able to best her. Volgin tortures the living shit out of him. And then, like, we always hear about him being the best fighting man of the 20th century. He does stuff before Operation Snake Eater that we don't really get to hear about. Like, when does he gain this status? Is it when we're playing Venom? And like during the time that Venom is doing Outer Haven, is it during that time? Is it during his time with MSF and during Peace Walker? You know, I've always wondered this. What time exactly does he become the greatest fighting soldier? Or he's labeled this. And like what and why? What, you know? Anyways, his body? Why would they want something like that so badly? No idea. But unless they have it within 24 hours, they'll launch a nuclear strike. Richard glanced at the watch coldly. So we have about 19 hours. You don't seem too worried. The DOD is already working on a solution. Wow, so they contacted Natasha to be a part of Metal Gear Solid 1 around the same time that they contacted Snake. Huh. The DOD is already working on the situation. Just as I'd suspect, Richard always had a plan in place and the machinery in motion before opening up to someone else. All he asked from others is approval after the fact. Shadow Moses is completely locked down. We had to rule out deploying an entire assault team. Instead, we're inserting a single operative to free the hostages and prevent the nuclear strike. Impossible. Possible for Solid Snake. Solid Snake, the former Foxhound, a legend among mercenaries for single-handedly bringing down the fortress cities of Outer Haven and Zanzibar land? Yes. With Solid Snake in the picture, there was a possibility of success. But still, the USS Discovery, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine, is already in place with Snake aboard. So the plan was already a go. I looked Richard in the eye and held his gaze. And what do I have to do with all of this? He grinned. Snake may be a legend, but he knows jack about nuclear weapons, which is why I'm asking you to be part of the mission support. We'll have you set up in no time. Right on cue, two men started to move a large piece of hardware, apparently communications equipment, into the study. Richard nodded towards the bulky load. I'd like you to be available for Snake for consultation via a satellite link up. As soon as the equipment was in place, an engineer type started to make adjustments. I could see another group of men setting up a satellite dish in the backyard. They were all in civilian clothes, but not a few of them had the build and the oddly fitting jacket that marked them as armed military personnel. Clearly, refusal was not an option. But there was still something that puzzled me. Ness has a small investigation team, SRT, on standby at all times for immediate response. They were stationed in Nellis AFB, Air Force Base, in Las Vegas, just over in Nevada. Clearly, they were the natural choice for this assignment. And if not the SRT, the DIA also has a number of qualified nuclear weapons specialists. Richard had started to direct his men on where to set up the equipment, but I interrupted him. Why me? He turned and answered without missing a beat. I need people I can trust. There's too much at stake. It was a lie. The Richard Ames I knew trusted no one. But it was clear that whatever the reason, he did not intend to tell me. It's a good thing I was in. What would you have done if I weren't? You have to be somewhere. We would have located you. You have to be somewhere. We would have located you. That seems weird. I'm sure you would have. So are you in? I took a deep breath. Of course. I don't enjoy being a pawn, especially Richard's, but I had no intention of standing by while nuclear terrorism was in progress. A nuclear strike takes an untold number of lives, all in a blink of an eye. Adults, infant men and women, it kills indiscriminately. If there was a chance that I could do something to stay the hands of a nuclear button, I had to do it. So everything's set. Richard slapped a fist into a palm. Insurgent was a success. Snake is on Shadow Moses. Richard walked into the study with a update he just received from one of his men. The study was almost unrecognizable, thanks in part to the racks of communications hardware. Cables snaked along every square inch of available space, and engineers and the DIA agents were coming and going in controlled chaos. The place looked like what it now was, a temporary mission control room. Richard laid a hand on my shoulder. You should be hearing from him soon. You're clear on how to use the radio? I nodded assent. While the engineers were busy setting up the equipment, I had been briefed on its use as well as the mission. Snake had been delivered to the general area of Shadow Moses Island by the USS Discovery, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine. He was then ejected from the submarine on a swimmer delivery vehicle, SDV, which he abandoned once within range of underwater listening devices located near the disposal plant. He could swim the rest of the way in the freezing cold Bering Sea water. This last leg of the insertion struck me as nothing short of suicide until I learned that Solid Snake was outfitted with a state-of-the-art sneaking suit that had been injected with a compound to prevent the onset of hypothermia. In addition, while Snake would be the only field operative involved, he would be in radio contact with a support team during much of the mission. The members of this support team drew from a wide range of backgrounds. The mission control officer was Colonel Roy Campbell, who would remain aboard the USS Discovery. I knew him by reputation alone. He was a former Foxhound commander and Solid Snake's commanding officer during the quelling of the 1999 Zanzibar land uprising. He was also there during Outer Heaven, though. No, he wasn't, actually. No, he wasn't. It was Big Boss. He had retired soon after, but from the looks of things, he had been called out of retirement for this mission. Dr. Naomi Hunter, a genetic engineering expert on a temporary assignment from the Gentech giant ATGC, was also on the team. She had apparently been leading the bioengineering program for Foxhound. Richard matter-of-factly confirmed that both Foxhound and the Next Generation Special Forces had been undergoing genetic manipulation to enhance their combat capabilities. I've had a difficult time grasping what we had to come to. Modifying a person's essential genetic structure for the sake of creating a better soldier? Also aboard the Discovery was Mei Ling, the inventor of the new radar and communication system deployed for this mission. She was something of an engineering wonderkin, an MIT student who managed to turn the current protocol of secure communications completely on its head. The last of the support team was McDonald Miller, a former survival instructor for Foxhound. Unlike the rest of us, he had volunteered his services upon receiving news of the incident on Shadow Moses. How would he receive news, though? Is what I want to know. How? That doesn't even make any sense. It's supposed to be a secure remote nuclear disposal facility known by very few people. How would he even know? They didn't think that was suspicious. But I guess they assumed since he was a former survival instructor for Foxhound, he had connections, I guess. Like myself, he was working via satellite uplink from his home in Alaska. The five of us were more than equipped to support Snake from our respected areas of expertise. But Snake was still the lone field operative, and the mission was a desperate one. Despite that, Richard maintained that this was the most workable plan produced by the DoD situational analysts. In hindsight, perhaps I should have suspected something then. The signs of a conspiracy were there, clearly disguised as if it was a seemingly reckless mission plan. Oh, she's talking about in past tense. But we failed to see it. Both Solid Snake and I were to regret our folly bitterly. It's time, Nastasha, Richard called out as the call signal came on. The line was already live as I nodded to him, and I took my position. I could feel myself growing nearer, more on edge. This is Natasha Romanenko. Good to meet you, Solid Snake. You the nuclear expert that the colonel was talking about? The voice that responded over the radio, above all things, calm. Here was a man operating alone out of a deeply hostile territory, and I could sense nothing resembling tension or impatience in his tone. Instead, it was a level of unruffled, as someone answered a routine telephone call at their office. Impressed, I continued on. Correct. If you have any questions about nuclear technology, all you need to do is ask. My department is nuclear analysts, so I should be able to provide support with weapons information as well. I was called into this mission as a nuclear emergency search team consultant, and I like to emphasize that my cooperation was freely given. I have no intentions of allowing any nuclear strikes on my watch, let alone the rogue kind. Let me work with you on this one. You get to the point fast, don't you? There's a missile that's about to fly. A nuclear strike can never be someone else's problem. And I'm not good at standing around twiddling my thumbs. Not that I can do little more than advise in this case. The fact was all too obvious. Snake was the one who was putting his life on the line in Alaska, and I was safe and sound in California. All I could do was talk over the radio. Snake's voice became less abrupt. It may not seem like much, but it's enough. No one's asking you to come out here and fight. That's my job anyway. Natasha, I'll be counting on you, counting on your help. These aren't exact quotes that he says from the game either, because he says a pleasure to work with you during the game. It was a strangely comforting voice, a voice that inspired truth. Same here, I answered. I resolved myself to do everything in my power to help him complete this mission. The nuclear weapons disposal plant on Shadow Moses dates back to 2002. It was built solely for the purpose of temporarily storing nuclear weapons slated for disposal. I started to brief Snake on the background of the disposal facility, running through the points he needed to know. My first short exchange with Solid Snake ever, I was bringing to understand why he was called the man who makes the impossible possible. The icy calm in the face of insurmountable difficulty. The absolute confidence made it suddenly seem possible that he would pull off this deadly mission. He had the power to make me believe. I grew uh I grew conscious of Richard's gaze. What? Oh, I just that you have kind of a glow about you when you're working. I like it. A glow? Funny you used to call it a workaholicism in the past. You found it very unappealing, I recall. Time flies. People change their minds. It's called nostalgia. You'll dislike it again soon enough. Perhaps. Richard continued to look at me. Solid Snake certainly managed to live up to his reputation. He adroitly wove his way through the enemy patrols and infiltrated the nuclear weapons disposal plant, where he made contact with Donald Anderson, the DARPA chief, or the DARPA director. Throughout the mission, we had radio monitoring capability over Snake's every movement, thanks to his internal nanomachines. It was through this access channel that I learned a shocking fact. Donald Anderson, discovered in solitary confinement by Solid Snake, confirmed that the terrorists had full nuclear capability, and Shadow Moses Island was the site of a field exercise for Metal Gear. Metal Gear. The very mention of that name sent me reeling. It was the ultimate weapon, a nuclear capable bipedal tank that could launch a rapid and accurate nuclear strike from virtually any terrain, from mountains to marshlands to the desert dunes. It could bestow the dubious privilege of initiating a missile strike from the sites that were previously out of question as launch locations. For that very reason, an analyst had long predicted that if brought to fruition. I always say this word wrong. Fruition. Metal Gear's technology would rewrite the technical map of the world. There are speculations that this unholy grail of weapons development was being pursued late last century in South Africa's fortress of Outer Heaven. Oh, they're talking about Metal Gear D. Is it Metal Gear D? I don't know what the Metal Gear is called in Metal Gear 1. Then in the ultra nationalism sovereignty of Zanzibar land in Central Asia. One source went so far as to claim that a working prototype had been produced, but the weapon never made it into the world military stage. Instead, it was destroyed by a special forces operative. The squad in question was Foxhound, and the operative was a man codenamed Solid Snake. I briefly wondered if it were some strange quirk of fate that had brought Snake into this latest incident, but I knew Richard too well. Snake had to have been called in because of his past battles. Whoever had planned this mission had been thorough, and the more I realized the fact, the less I liked it. And she brings up a good point. Why was Snake chosen to do this mission? Yeah. A few years ago, I interviewed a high-ranking DoD official and led the conversation to the subject of Metal Gear. His response at the time was that the U.S. had very little interest in developing a weapon like Metal Gear. Not that he officially admitted that such a thing as Metal Gear existed. On a purely hypothetical level, if such a technology were available, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, nuclear arsenal built to enforce the idea of a mutually asserted destruction has lost its justification. And the deterrent argument was a losing ground. In the current multilateral world order, rife with smaller regional powers, as he put it, development priority laid with crisis missiles, and smaller weapons with lower lethality that could be carried by stealth bombers. He also went on to note that Metal Gear, with its affinity for rough terrain, would be extremely difficult to discover and destroy. Hence, it was the perfect nuclear strike system for rogue stakes. He was deeply concerned that if such a non-democratic sovereignties were to get a hold on Metal Gear technology, the resulting upset in the balance of military power would lead to a massive rupture in the world order. It was a fear that I myself shared. An artifact of the Cold War. The devil's candy created by a nuclear proliferation. That was what Metal Gear seemed to be. So why was this weapon, a cutting-edge technology that was politically long obsolete, being developed once again on American soil? It was possible that the Defense Department wanted to restore last century's nuclear strategy to the national agenda. Or did this new Metal Gear have something that set it far apart from Metal Gear as I knew it? Anderson had more to say. Metal Gear's launch key consisted of two separate passwords, one held by Anderson himself and the other by Kenneth Baker, the president of Arms Tech. Anderson's own password was already in Terrace's hands, and he feared that the same was true for Kenneth Baker's. A renegade foxhound psychic, codenamed Psycho Mantis, had literally read Anderson's mind and obtained the key. The bottom line was that the terrorists could activate Metal Gear and launch the missile whenever they please. The worst case scenario had come true. However, Anderson revealed that there was still a way to prevent the nuclear strike. Kenneth Baker alone had the emergency override key that could be used to re-enter the launch code and cancel the missile launch. Even if the terrorists had already completed preparations for a strike, the override would reverse the process. His only hope now riding on obtaining the override key, Snake attempted to leave the cell area with Anderson in tow. We heard the terrible cries over the radar at the same time Snake did. Anderson had suddenly started to clutch at his own chest in agony. And before we could ever recover from our initial shock, he was dead. Dr. Naomi Hunter, monitoring the situation from aboard the USS Discovery, tentatively diagnosed the cause of death as a heart attack. Snake walked out of the cell alone in search of Kenneth Baker. Leaving behind what had, until recently, been Donald Anderson, chief of the DARPA, Donald Anderson, chief of DARPA. All right. What exactly is going on here? I confronted Richard as soon as possible. I confronted Richard as soon as I confirmed Snake's safe departure. You know the situation. There was a Metal Gear field exercise being conducted on Shadow Moses. Foxhound and the next generation commandos were in charge of the exercise. And now they're threatening to use the Metal Gear to launch a nuclear strike. Apparently, I didn't know about that particular situation, if you say so. I glared at Richard, but he didn't turn a hair. He knew as well as I did that I could not abandon the mission, even if I did refuse to cooperate further. There was an entire group of DoD personnel around me that would not permit that to happen. I briefly closed my eyes and brought the recent events into focus again. What happened to Anderson? Why is he dead? This time I could see a trace of a reaction in Richard's eyes. It's hard to say from our end. Naomi thinks it was a heart attack, but I'll have his medical records pulled just in case. He turned and left the study, presumingly to give orders to that effect. The sounds and the voice being broadcasted from the radio told me that Snake was moving deeper into the complex in search of Kenneth Baker. Snake found the Arms Tech president in one of the underground levels. Kenneth was bound to a steel girder along with multiple packets of C4 explosives. Before Snake could free Baker, he came face to face with the originator of this trap, a Foxhound operative called Revolver Ocelot. It seemed that he had anticipated Baker's rescue attempt upon receiving news of Snake's arrival. According to Naomi Hunter, the former director of Foxhound's genetic manipulation program, Revolver Ocelot is a former Spetsnaz. He moved into Oman, a Ultarov Militisi Osobogo Nazamanachi. Yeah, I don't even know. The Interior Ministry Riot Squad, aka the Black Berets, and the SVR, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, a successor of the KGB's first chief Doctorate after the collapse of the Soviet Union, but was unable to adopt the new reign and dropped out. He cut a swath through the world's hotspots as a mercenary before being recruited by Foxhound. As his code name indicates, Ocelot is a master marksman with a marked preference for revolvers. We could hear the gun battle between Snake and Ocelot over the radio. Ocelot was using an antique single-action army revolver against Snake's Cellcom pistol. The first single-action army revolver was manufactured in 1873. A small number of them are still in production today, but were strictly for collectors and antique weapon fanciers. Using this outmoded weapon for live combat is unheard of. But Ocelot seemed to be invested in the vintage gun with diabolical powers. He would purposefully fire against the walls and floors, weaving a tight web of ricocheting bullets around Snake, gradually hemming him in. All we could do is silently monitor the battle. However, Snake was slowly but surely gaining the upper hand by dodging the ricocheting and exploding the revolver's lengthening reload window. Finally, just as Snake was about to deliver the decisive blow, an explosion rang out. "My hand!" Ocelot screams. Came a second later, followed by more explosions. "What the hell is going on?" Richard cried. The controller in charge of the data sent in by Snake's nanomachine started running commentary. "We don't know yet. I'm seeing a life sign other than those of Snake, Ocelot, or Baker." Explosions continued to boom out over the radio. The unidentified fourth subject is knocking down the girders. No signs of firearm use. Whatever is it, it's moving fast. The controller's voice rose with excitement. The speed as the speed is well above anything a human being should be able to handle. The situation was chaotic. I could make out Ocelot's voice through the roar of the collapsing metal. Stealth camouflage. Someone left a job only half done. As for you, we'll continue this later. Someone left a job only half done. He says in Metal Gear Solid, the original, can't you even die right? We'll meet again. That's what he says. I like it. I like how she's like misremembering what they say, because that's what happens. They say like eyewitnesses of things. Their recount of the events are often inaccurate of what actually happened. So pretty cool that she's actually not 100% getting these quotes right. It's pretty realistic to what would probably happen. It seems Ocelot had left the area. The explosions went on one after the other as the Geeters crashed to the ground. In the midst of the collapse, Snake confronted what we could only guess was the fourth life signal. Who are you? I'm like you. I have no name. It was not human, but an artificial machine voice that answered. In spite of the metallic tones, there seemed to be in that voice an unspeakable pain. Baker labored groans could be heard over the conversation. You have a reinforced skeleton? Suddenly, the possessor of the metal voice let out an animal howl. The shattering scream set the communication speaker screeching, and I instinctively covered my ears to shut out the maddened sound. The cry went on, and then cut out as abruptly as it began. The ringing silence, the controller's voice floated out, thin and hollow. The fourth subject has disappeared. The words brought us out of such a state of shock. Can we track him? Negative. He's vanished. No traces. Collect as much data as you can. I have the full results of information relayed by nanomachines. There was an electromagnetic pattern that resembles a stealth camouflage signature. Stealth camouflage? And a reinforced skeleton? Richard muttered, deep in thought. Not everything is happening according to plan, I take it. I inquired with some sarcasm. It's within acceptable deviation. The mission will go on as planned. For a split second, his eyes betrayed his disquiet. Then he quickly recovered his characteristic arrogance. You could just concentrate on your job. Hey, Daedalus. Hello. How's it going? Snake had called the fourth life sign the ninja. I could not help but wonder about the identity of the name's bearer, and what it was that accounted for the superhuman abilities he had just demonstrated. Far away on Shadow Moses Island, Snake was attempting to raise the shaken Kerneth Baker back on his feet. We could hear Snake asking him about the nuclear launch codes, knowing the answer even as he spoke. Baker painfully acknowledged that he had volunteered the information. His arm hung broken and useless by his side, presumably Ocelot's handiwork. According to Naomi's Hunter's intelligence, Revolver Ocelot had served as a special interrogations consultant in the Soviet gulags during his time with Spetsnaz. In other words, he was an expert in torture. There was no way that the weapons technology executive, an untrained civilian, could withstand the techniques of a coin inside developed in the cells of Lubicana. We now had confirmation that the terrorists possessed both launch keys. The situation was way more desperate than ever. Baker's response to Snake's queries about the emergency override keys was also as grim. He had entrusted a soldier, a woman who had refused to join the mutiny, with it while they had been sharing a cell. I caught Snake's sudden murmur. The colonel's niece? The colonel was presumably Campbell, and Snake seemed to know something. I certainly did not. I stole a glance at Richard, but his expression was as closed as ever. He no doubtedly had known about the outset of the presence of Campbell's niece on Shadow. Snake was pressing Baker, asking him whether there was a way to stop the launch without the override codes. The executive gave him a name, Dr. Hal Emmerich. If it were indeed the case that the launch codes were in hostile hands and the strike sequence had been started, it stood reason that the only person who may know a way to cancel the launch was the chief Metal Gear developer's development program. As Snake promised to search out Emmerich, Baker handed him a single optics disc. It contained, he said, all the data from the training exercise. What exercise data? He had to be referring to the Metal Gear exercise. I saw Richard raise his eyebrows sharply. Baker, obviously oblivious to the frenzy of speculation he had remotely set off, continued. There's no need for faint ignorance. You were sent to retrieve this, and we both know it. I was now even more puzzled than ever. If Metal Gear was being developed on Shadow Moses, surely the research data was backed up somewhere outside of ArmsTech's labs. Not only that, but why would the president of the company have been carrying the data himself? I was apparently not alone in my disconcernment. Snake took the disc, obviously uncertain. It was clear that he, like myself, had not been briefed on the existence of the disc. The disc safely out of his hands, Baker's tone became pleading. You have to stop them. If the truth goes out, ArmsTech will be finished. I would be finished. But Metal Gear's technology is already a known factor. The core technology is, but that's not. Baker's trailed off, suddenly pale with pain. Oh, God. What did you do to me? We could hear his laboring coughing as he gasped out. It can't be. That thing. The damn Pentagon bureaucrats. I get it now. You son of a... He tried to lunge at Snake, but reared back in a fresh wave of pain. Still clenching his chest, he fell down, dead. It was too similar to the last moments of Donald Anderson's life, and the fact had not escaped Snake. He was immediately on the radio with Campbell. Colonel, you better be listening real well. This one dropped dead too. Snake demanded an explanation, but neither Campbell nor Dr. Hunter could provide an adequate one. Snake was clearly dissatisfied. But Campbell directed Snake to cooperate with his niece, Meryl. The only way left to prevent a nuclear strike was to obtain the emergency override key, and the key was in Meryl's hands. Snake walked away from the Baker's body in search of the elusive commando. Kenneth Baker had been colluding with Donald Anderson, the DARPA chief, to secretly develop a new Metal Gear on government so-called black budget. My later investigations revealed that regular payments in tens of thousands of dollars had been made to the corporate accounts of a firm for which Anderson's wife absolutely acted as a consultant. The arms tech payout into this dummy company had started several years ago. The total amount is difficult to estimate, but there is little doubt that Anderson had been bribed to the tune of a astronomical sum. Even the government's black budget had limits, however. I recall a rumor that for some years before the Anderson payoff started, the CON, Chief of Naval Operatives, at the time had a classified pet project. The scuttlebutt was that it involved the construction of a completely new type of battleship. Just what kind of ship was never revealed, since the entire program fell apart after the CNO suddenly passed away. The unexpected death coincided with the arms tech launch of Metal Gear's development program. The black budget earmarked for the CON's little project must have been freed up by his death. The question was whether it had been freed up for the allocation to the new Metal Gear development. The manner of the CNO's death was officially ruled a suicide, but I could not help recall the theories to the contrary that he had made its rounds back then. Whatever the background, Anderson and the Baker's deaths could not be a coincidence. Anderson's dying words included a reference to the Pentagon, and I was certain that there was more to it that meets the eye. So now Baker's dead as well. Are you two looking into the medical records too? I asked Richard. We'll do that, just as a precaution. He did not seem particularly disturbed. It may have been for the best anyway. Having to babysit senior citizens with a broken arm sure wasn't going to help Snake with his mission. You haven't changed a bit, I see. What? That's bad boy act of yours. You only talk like a insensitive jerk to divert attention from something. I wonder what you're hiding. Richard turned away. Nothing. There's nothing to hide. Having successfully made radio contact with Merrill, Colonel Campbell's niece, Solid Snake agreed to put up a rendezvous with her in favor of rescuing Dr. Hal Emmerich, the chief of Metal Gear Development. He reached the lab just as the ninja was attempting to attack Dr. Emmerich, and the two fighters immediately squared off. Snake and the ninja launched into a silent hand-to-hand combat, a ballistic exchange of blows that seemed almost to serve as a private dialogue. The fighting seemed internable to us as we followed over radar. But just as the last encounter, the ninja suddenly let out an inhuman howl and vanished in the maelstrom of its rage echo. It was the second encounter with the ninja, and we were as in the dark about him as ever. But Snake had recognized something during their battle, and he raised Campbell on the radio. It's Gray Fox. The ninja is Gray Fox. I'm 100% sure. That's impossible. You took him out in Zanzibar land. We could hear the perturbation and Campbell's voice. Naomi Hunter suddenly cut in. Yes, he was supposed to have been killed, but he wasn't. Dr. Hunter revealed that her predecessor, the helm of Fox Unit's genetic treatment program, one Dr. Clark, had been conducting human testing. Gray Fox, the alpha soldier of the Foxhound, and the only member allowed the Fox designation, was the subject. After he had been shipped back from Zanzibar land mortally wounded, his superior physical abilities and combat skills had marked him as an ideal test subject for genetic manipulation and skeletal reinforcement experiments. He was listed as killed in action, but kept alive in a lab. I could not help but note, with some surprise, the emotional tone in which the normality collected Genesis described these events. When Snake asked why she had not volunteered the truth of the ninja's identity earlier, Naomi had only a terse reply. It was classified information. Hey, Craig. Hello. Hello. Almost 1/3 in. Almost 1/3 in. What's 1/3? Yeah. Wait, 1/3. What is 1/3? I don't even know. Oh, 1/3's in 3 pages. Yeah, we're almost 1/3 done. Nice. 108. Thank you. This is actually going by a lot faster than what I thought. I thought this would take a lot longer. Um, we could have probably got this done today if I started at the beginning of the stream. According to the records, she had seen the subject Gray Fox had died in an accidental lab explosion 2 years ago. I turned to Richard. Is this true? What's true? The incident in the lab. It's true. The cause of the explosion was never determined. Dr. Clark died in the accident. And the only remains they could find of Gray Fox were fragments of the reinforced skeleton. So Naomi wasn't the only one who knew about this and didn't say anything. It was classified information, Richard mimicked. Snake secured Dr. Emmerich after the ninjas... wait a minute, did I skip something? No. After the ninjas department. Amazingly enough, the engineer had believed Metal Gear to be a portable tactical missile defense system rather than a nuclear-capable tank. It was a peculiar irony that the chief developer himself was unaware that the program was one of offense, not defense. On discovering that he had been deceived, Dr. Emmerich volunteered his expertise, the Snake. He mentioned his grandfather's involvement in the Manhattan Project and the ethical turmoil the man had carried with him to the end of his days as a result. Ironically enough, the older scientist's son, Hal Emmerich's father, was born on the day the atomic bomb had found Hiroshima. 3 generations. Sometimes I wonder if nuclear warfare is our personal abatros, an inherent pathology. We could hear the pain and the regret in Dr. Emmerich's voice. He didn't say that in the game, though. He said something different. He said 3 generations of Emmerich men. We must have the curse of nuclear weapons written to our DNA, is what he says. God, this is sad. This is making me realize how much of the lines I know in MGS1. This is making me sad. He seemed genuinely upset that the technology he had developed purely for the furthering of knowledge and the betterment of mankind had been exploited for weapons development. You may call me harsh, but I felt little sympathy for him. Technological and scientific innovations need not have direct bearing on nuclear or virological research to contribute to the making of a weapon of mass destruction. After all, the ninja was born of a genetic engineering and cybernetic research, which could easily have healed a civilian rather than improve upon a soldier. A scientist cannot plead enmity to the practical products of their own research. The consequences must be anticipated, and the ethical burden of a newly developed technology must ultimately rest with the individual researcher. I wonder if Dr. Emmer would ever realize that honest. Freed from the laboratory where he was being held. How long have you been at it? Not that long. How long would you say we've been at it, chat? Maybe about an hour, maybe? If that. It makes it better, making better time than I expected, but these are like 1/4 pages. That's true too. That's very true. If it was like a full book, it would be like 900 of these, maybe 1,000 plus. Freed from the laboratory where he was being held, Emmerich cloaked himself with a stealth camouflage of his own making and promised to keep out of sight. With the stealth camo, he could easily evade the terrorist surveillance. His rescue charge safe. Snake departed for the rendezvous with Merrill. Snake's objective was to meet with Merrill and re-enter the launch codes using her override key, outfitting the Foxhound Psycho Manus all the while. Outwitting the Foxhound Psycho Manus all the while. To this end, he headed towards the hangar where Metal Gear was being stowed. The best laid plans, Meryl was ambushed on her way by Foxhound sharpshooter Sniper Wolf. Snake, attempting to rescue the wounded comrade, was himself captured. He was taken to the terrorist command post, still unconscious, stripped of all his gear. However, his coach Lyrit implant radio passed unnoticed. I think that's in your ear, if I remember correctly. And we could hear the terrorists conferring about the incapacitated operative. We gathered from their talk about the preparation times for the nuclear weapons were complete. Richard was unusually intended on identifying the individual terrorists in the room. From the voices involved in the conversation, we confirmed the presence of Sniper Wolf, Revolver Ocelot, and the leader of the uprising himself, Liquid Snake. What little I knew of Liquid Snake was troubling, and it came entirely from a slim file folder Richard showed me just prior to the mission commencement. The man with the same designation as Solid Snake was recruited into Foxhound after Solid Snake's departure from the unit. His fighting skills were formidable. He quickly rose to the leadership position in Foxhound's field operation team. His real name, place of origins, and other information remained classified. Only a single photograph accompanied the document, and I had not been able to contain my astonishment at the sight of it. It's not a mistake. This is Liquid Snake, said Richard, echoing my thoughts. But how? The face in the photo was the spitting image of Solid Snake. I wouldn't know. But once the two snakes run into each other, something may come out. His words were non-committal. Non-committal? But Richard's tone speaks volumes. And now the two snakes, Solid and Liquid, had indeed come face to face. But Liquid had little to say. "So long, brother," he called out before turning and walking away. The voice was full of hatred, but there was also something in it that seemed to confirm and gleefully anticipate another meeting. Why this was so was as mysterious to me as the reason he called Solid Snake brother. I would not find out the truth until a little later. We awaited Snake before his briefing encounter with Liquid was Ocelot's KGB tested interrogation techniques. Ocelot apparently had no interest in extracting information, but rather it appeared to be enjoying the act of torture for his own sake. Snake's ragged grasp echoed from the radio in the silence of the control room. The heart rate and other physiological data transmitted by his nanomachines graphically demonstrated the extent of his suffering. All we could do was listen and wait. After Ocelot was done, the battered Snake was taken to a cell. Campbell soon established radio contact with them, but Snake had some hard questions for his former CO instead. He had realized that Metal Gear was a nuclear delivery system, and for once Campbell was at a loss for an answer. "So you did know this all along," Snake rasped out bitterly. Campbell continued to be silent. It was all the confirmation Snake needed. "You should have told me. I'm sorry. Pawns don't need to know. Is that it? You've changed." Campbell had no rebuttal to Snake's barbs. According to Campbell, even the president had apparently been unaware of the existence of the Project Rex until the day before. To make matters more complicated, he was due to meet with the Russian president the following day for the formal signings of START 3. The treaties stipulate further reductions of nuclear arsenal, picking up where START 3 left off. The agreement would reduce the number of Russian and American tactical ballistic missiles to somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500. And the signing was a historical event that had been made possible by a long and arduous process. The fact that a new nuclear weapon was being developed by the United States were made public. There was a significant chance the signing would never take place. Worse still, the loss of confidence in the Americans' commitment to a non-proliferation could create international turmoil. The government clearly had every reason to keep the situation under wraps. And there was ample indications that the terrorists had counted on that fact. The timing of this takeover, as well as the 24-hour deadline, said as much. Campbell continued to plead his case with Snake. "Snake, you've got to stop them. Singing it to someone else. You're the only hope we have." "All right then. Tell me what this new warhead is about." "I told you, I don't know." "I don't believe you." Ellipsis. "If the situation is so desperate, why don't you accept their demands? Give them Big Boss's body. It's just a corpse." "That's not an option." Campbell was fluttering under the barrage of Snake's questions. "Is there a reason you can't comply with the demands? A reason you haven't told me?" Naomi broke in Campbell's fell silent. The president passed a number of policies that severely restricted genetic engineering on humans. He can't afford to have the public know about the military's use of genetically enhanced soldiers. Is that really all there is to it? Campbell didn't reply. I received a call from Snake soon after. Captive alone in enemy territory, unable to trust his own mission controllers to tell him the truth. There was little I could say to help a man in Snake's situation. Capture does not mean defeat. Stay vigilant for the chance to escape and don't give up. I had doubts about the effectiveness of these words coming from someone with no combat experience, but it was the best I could offer. We had no choice but to trust in Snake's abilities. As I closed the radio channel, I caught Richard studying me. Yes, you're very passionate about this job. Do you object? It's the job you forced on me after all. No, no, but I admit that I'm a little jealous. Ah, the jealousy act. Yes, I know that one too. Richard averted his eyes. I wouldn't call it an act. No, forget it. He lit a cigarette. Chesterfield, the same brand as Humphrey Bogart. You still smoke the same brand? You know me. Once I decide I like something, I can't kick the habit. Cigarettes, line of work, women, everything. He didn't look at me as he replied. The torture was conducted again and again, solely for the purpose of breaking Snake. He held out each time, but his strength was steadily embedding, and the voice we heard over the radio was growing more labor. Naomi, talk to me. I need something to distract me. No, he says, I need something to take my mind off the pain. That's what he said. Okay? What do you want to talk about? Anything. I'm not good at finding things to talk about. That's not what she said either. Tell me about yourself. About me? That's not so easy. That's not what she said. You got a family? It's not a very happy story. I don't have any family. I guess there was one person. Someone who called himself my father. Where is he? Dead. By my own hands. Is what he said. He didn't say I killed him. This is getting worse, Intra. I was even more taken aback by what Campbell volunteered next. You're talking about Big Boss. What? Big Boss was your... No reason you should have known, Campbell elaborated to Naomi. It was 6 years ago in Zanzibar land. Snake and I are the only ones who know about it now. Oh, God. Was Big Boss really your father? Naomi still seemed disbelieving. That's what he told me. You know what? He doesn't say that to him in the game, though. We just played the game. He never says that to him. Not that I remember. I don't remember him saying in Metal Gear 2 that he's his dad. Or maybe he did. Maybe I just don't remember. Oh my God, was Big Boss really your father? Naomi still seeming disbelieving. That's what he said. He said that's what he told me. And that's all I know. He didn't even say that. You knew and you still killed him? Yeah. Why? Naomi asked furiously. There was a pause before Snake answered. Because that's what he wanted. And what I wanted. He didn't say he didn't say the second part in the game. But it's still petricide. No, she says, but that's petricide. Yeah. And he goes, yep. I know. My personal nightmare, too. Snake's voice was the faintest we've heard. Is that why you left Foxhound? Maybe. I can't deny that it felt good to lose myself. It's easy to do that in Alaska. After a moment of silence, Naomi confided in a low voice. I don't really have a family of my own either. I have a brother who put me through college. That's it. He's not a biological brother and a lot older than me. Where is he now? Naomi replied. Naomi's reply was deeply pained. He's gone. There was a deep sorrow in her voice, and I thought something more. A stepbrother who put her through school. I wasn't told about that. Richard muddled. There was suspicion in his voice, and puzzling enough, a hint of anger. I opened the personal profile of Naomi. Naomi Hunter, born New York City, 1980. PhD in genetics, recruited by the industry giant ATGC soon after completing doctoral program, moved to the California so-called biotech Bay Area, led several genetic therapy programs until recruited by Foxhound to fill the post of chief geneticist as a result of her accomplishment in the field. Parents died in a car crash when Naomi was 2 years old. One brother, 10 years her senior, a U.S. Marine, killed in a training-related incident when Naomi was 17. Richard thought for a minute, then scribbled something in his notepad. Summoning one of his men, he tore the page out and handed it to him. Wire this message to the skipper of USS Discovery and make sure Campbell doesn't know about it. What are you plotting now? I knew even as I asked, Richard would not respond. The torture was repeated time and again, but Snake managed to take advantage of the guards' weighing vigilance and escape. The location and the fate of his fellow hostage, Merrill, eluded us. Evading the intense manhunt that followed, Snake still refused to stray from the course that led to Metal Gear's hangar. What drove him? Guilt for Merrill's capture? And an urge to avenge her? A sense of duty to the mission? The will to stop the carnage of a nuclear strike? None of them seemed to apply to Snake. He was an enigma. We could do little but watch over him as he ran, wounded and exhausted. After successfully taking on Sniper Wolf as she reemerged from an ambush, Snake closed in on the Metal Gear hangar only to discover Vulcan Raven blocking his way. The giant Foxhound operative, armed with a fighter plane Gatling gun. He was a daunting enemy, but in the end, however, Snake eventually prevailed. Dang, so they completely missed the they completely skipped the hide. Yeah. They completely skipped over the hide. If we're already at the nuclear base, they don't even talk about it. The stricken Raven, leaning against the wall, started to speak as Snake approached him. There are some breeds of snake that nature never intended. I think you and the boss belong to one of those. Go on and settle it with them. I'll be watching how it ends. Yeah, they didn't talk. So the hind fight isn't canon. Right. Also, that's not what Raven says. Raven says, you and the boss are not of this world. You are of a world that I do not wish to be a part of. Snake, my spirit will be watching you, understand? The dying Raven, go and settle it with them. I'll be watching how it ends. The dying Raven then dropped the bombshell. I'll give you one clue. The man who died in front of you wasn't the DARPA chief. It was Decoy Octopus, one of us, Foxhound. He was a master of disguise. I guess the Grim Reaper was the one who he couldn't fool. Is he dead? Raven did not answer Snake's sharp query. Snake tried another tack. Why go to all that trouble and impersonate Anderson? Raven smiled faintly. That's all the clues you're going to get. Everything else you'll have to figure out yourself. A few minutes later, Vulcan Raven died. Richard was chagrined. Chagrined? So that's how it was. They had us completely fooled. Why would Ocelot impersonate Anderson? Or why would Octopus impersonate Anderson, I asked. I don't know. Maybe to get information out of Snake? That would mean that they knew Snake was coming. Richard stubbed out a cigarette without answering. His face was expressionless. But I knew exactly what he was thinking. We had a leak. While Richard and I were talking, a call was made to Snake. Snake, it's me, Master. Snake answered. It was apparently Master Miller. I need to talk to you about Naomi Hunter. Turn the monitor off. Miller had barely finished his instructions before Campbell cut in. What about Dr. Hunter? Miller had an exasperated sound. It was clearly that he had no intention. He had not intended Campbell to hear what he had to say. Colonel, is Naomi there? Snake asked. No, she's trying to catch up on her sleep. Okay. Campbell turned his attention back to Miller. What were you saying about Dr. Hunter? All right. Maybe it's better that the Colonel hears about this now. Miller said, resigningly, go on, urged Snake. What's not real? That's not the real Naomi Hunter you're working with, Colonel. What? Campbell raises his voice, astounded. Miller continues, coldly. Naomi Hunter does exist, or rather, she did. She went missing in the Middle East some time ago. The imposter must have gotten her identification somehow. There was a number of ways to obtain someone's social security number and commit an identity theft, certainly. But Dr. Naomi Hunter, an imposter? Who is she really then? Campbell was agitated, but Miller remained cold as ice. Probably a spy. A spy? Yes, sent in to ensure this mission's failure. Are you saying she's one of the terrorists? Campbell's tone was disbelieving, but Snake backed up his former instructor. I don't want to believe it either, Colonel. But it's true that she is a Foxhound personnel. So it would not be surprised if she took part in the insurrection. Campbell finished dully, as though Snake's word had crystallized his own doubts. Or she could be working for another organization, Miller suggested. Another? No, that's not possible. As Campbell trailed off, Miller spoke up, his tone ruthless. Take her into custody, Colonel. What? It's clear that Naomi Hunter is working against us. Interrogate her and find out what her objective is. If she really is their spy, we're in serious trouble, Colonel murmured. Miller pounced on the gravity of Colonel's tone. What are you talking about? Nothing in particular. Campbell tried to recover himself. Campbell, did you give her access to some other line of classified information? Ellipsis. Campbell remained silent, but Miller pressed on. Does it have anything to do with the way the DARPA chief or the Arms Tech president died? Look, I don't know what you're talking about. Clearly, Campbell knew something. It was equally obvious that he had no intention of revealing what he was privy to. Perhaps sensing the fact, Miller dropped the pursuit immediately. In any case, It's too dangerous to retain her in her in the mission. Hold on a minute. She's an integrated part of this mission. In fact, we can't afford to proceed without her. Campbell was being too incented about Dr. Hunter's value. I had to wonder if it was indeed the case that he had trusted her with highly classified information. Snake was also suspicious. More secrets, Colonel? Give me time. I'll have her background and movements rechecked. That was all that Campbell could say. Hurry and find out what she wants as quickly as possible, Miller unrelentingly. Of course, Campbell agreed reluctantly. Snake was given some time. Time is something I wasn't given a lot, Snake growled bitterly. That's not what he said. In the game, he says, I don't have any time for you. What's the deal? I said to Richard. Is Miller right about Naomi? I don't know, to be honest. It's the obvious thing. There were things in Naomi's past that I don't know about. I'm having them go over her background again. Richard was visibly upset, a rare occurrence. I suddenly wondered there had been something between him and Naomi. Richard lit a cigarette and continued in a more composed tone. But if what Miller said about Naomi is true, it raises questions about him in turn. Why do you say that? He's supposed to be in his cabin in Alaska. So I hear. How did he manage to find out so much about Naomi? By himself, from the middle of nowhere. When the DEA investigators couldn't, Richard called out one of his men over and ordered them to look into Miller's activities. You checked up on even one of your own men? I asked as the agent hurried away. How do you know he's one of our men, one of our own? Richard shot back, blowing a stream of smoke. Should I assume you don't trust me either? You're the one who doesn't trust me. Never have. He said quietly, and ground his cigarette into the ashtray. Snake had finally reached the Metal Gear hangar and stood in the shadow of the machine's 50-foot tall bulk. But considering Metal Gear's state-of-the-art composite armor, Snake's limited arsenal, it was improbable that he could destroy the tank while evading enemy patrols. The most practical avenue of attack was to re-enter the launch codes using the override key, therefore canceling the scheduled nuclear strike. As Snake methodically searched for the code entry interface, Emmerich radio in. He had been making himself useful by breaking into Baker's protected files. From these, he had pieced together the true nature of Metal Gear and its prototype warheads. According to Emmerich, the weapon used a built-in railgun to fire ballistic missiles clear of the atmosphere. The missiles would then automatically realign itself and re-enter the atmosphere on its designated trajectory towards the target. I understood exactly what all this meant, and the knowledge left me cold. Normally, ballistic missiles go through 4 phases from launch to impact. The first is the boost phase, which consists of the time between the missile's launch and the point at which it leaves the atmosphere and exhausts its supply of rocket propellant. Following the burnout, the rocket enters the post-boost phase, which concludes with the separation of the re-entry vehicle that contains the warhead, and the third stage is the mid-course phase, in which the re-entry vehicle separates and achieves a controlled descent back into the atmosphere. The warhead's re-entry into the atmosphere and its arrival at the target mark the fourth and terminal phase. Current missile defense systems detect incoming ballistic missiles by scanning for rocket burns that take place during the missile's boost stage. However, Metal Gear's missile technology employs a railgun rather than a conventional rocket propulsion to achieve boost state acceleration. As a result, there is nothing for existing missile defense systems to detect. The railgun's effectiveness is nothing short of amazing, with a range of over 3,000 miles, rivaling that of a mid-range ballistic missile. It reliably homes in within 170 feet of the target 50% of the time, placing it in the same class as a high-end ICBM. The ability of a Metal Gear to conquer virtually all terrain means that the railgun can launch a stealthy nuclear strike from almost any spot on the globe. This invisible attack would make it impossible for anyone to pinpoint the origins of a given missile, even in the event of a strike. Without a clear aggressor to retaliate against, the concept of mutual assured destruction falls apart. Without the fear of a MAD, the existing rules of nuclear non-engagement would no longer apply, and the world would fall into chaos. Snake had a few things to say to Campbell after learning the truth. He knew as well as anyone that the fact that the U.S. had been developing a new breed of nuclear weapons. They were made public on the air of START 3 negotiations. Negotiations would break down and the U.S. would suffer a devastating embarrassment. Did you know about this, Colonel? I really am sorry, Snake. You really had changed. I won't offer any excuses. Snake, you've got to hear this. Dr. Emmerich broke in, ignoring Campbell. The new missiles were completed in a simulation only. That's why they had to perform this exercise, to get the field data. That would back up their simulated results. How did the exercise go? Snake asked. Emmerich's reply was discouraging. It seemed to have gone better than they expected, and I couldn't find any of the data. There isn't a trace of any of the thing on the entire network. You'd think it'd be backed up somewhere, but zilch. It's on the optical disc that Baker gave me. You mean you still have it? Campbell exclaimed hopefully. No, Ocelot took it. Snake replied bitterly. It must have happened when he was a hostage. Did this mean that Ocelot had known of the existence of the exercise data beforehand? This doesn't look good, Campbell murmured, deep in thought. I glared at Richard. You knew about this too, didn't you? Knew what? The small matter of this new nuclear weapons technology. Richard shrugged. If I had told you, would you have cooperated? You probably would have tried to leak it to some media contact. And that would have forced our hand. He left it at that. Would he had me killed in the interests of national security? Something like that, I suppose. Something like that, I suppose. In the world Richard inhabitants, preserving secrets always merited higher concentration than human life. But I was privy to that secret now. What would happen once the mission ended? I felt a chill go down my spine as I considered the possibilities. Richard was quietly puffing on his cigarette. He had too many men with him, working for him every moment. There was no way I could simply walk out of this house. But I was privy to that secret now. What would happen once the mission ended? I felt a chill down my spine as I considered the possibilities. Richard was quietly puffing on his cigarette. He had too many men with him, working for him every moment. There was no way I could simply walk out of this house. But I had something up my sleeve as well, and I was not about to let myself be exploited without a fight. I looked over at my PC. The screensaver had kicked in, and a geometric pattern filtered across the dark monitor. I slipped my PDA into my pocket and headed for the bathroom to send some mail. One of Richard's men trod over with a slip of paper. Richard studied it and, after some consideration, raised Campbell on the radio. "What can I do for you, Major Ames?" Campbell's tone was openly hostile, but Richard paid no heed. "Colonel Campbell, I'd like you to start interrogating Naomi Hunter." "Interrogate her? What are you talking about?" Campbell said sharply. "There are suspicious points about Dr. Hunter's background. As you've heard, I've therefore sent one of my men over there to talk to her, but she seems reluctant to cooperate." Richard lit another cigarette. "But she's taking a nap," the colonel insisted. "Actually, she's not." "What?" "In reality, she's been taken into my agent's custody." "How dare you?" Campbell barked angrily. Richard was unfazed. "If, as Master Miller charged, Naomi Hunter has falsified her identity and is communication with the enemy, there are some serious repercussions. I trust you understand." "Fox die?" Campbell groaned. "Fox die? This was something new. This mission was like an onion, with layer after layer of secret intent. She won't talk to my agent. She may talk to you. Find out from Naomi who she is and what her objective is." "Absolutely not. I don't take orders from you. And I'm having Dr. Naomi, freed immediately." "What makes you think you can do such a thing?" replied Richard, exhausting a cloud of smoke. There was a long silence. "Who exactly the hell are you?" I could hear the barely suppressed rage in Campbell's voice. "The DIA won't have the authority to send a man into a Navy submarine and hold someone prisoner." Richard didn't answer. Campbell continued. "And that's not the only thing. Nothing has been done through the usual channels, including the way you induced Snake and I to cooperate. This mission isn't even official business, is it? So who else can mount such a major operation?" Campbell suddenly broke off. "Oh, interesting. So even Campbell wasn't attached to the mission by normal means. We know Snake was forced into it, but Campbell wasn't even uh, recruited to this mission by normal means. Huh. We don't learn that in the game." Campbell suddenly broke off as though struck by something. "Is it possible that the Patriots?" he murmured. Richard ignored Campbell's outburst. "Does it matter what I am? It doesn't change the fact that your life, not to mention your precious Meryl's life, is in my hands. Isn't that right?" This time it was Campbell's turn to be silent. I had never suspected that his participation in the mission had been arranged by force. The colonel was entirely fighting for his and his niece's life. "Think it over carefully, Colonel." Richard's voice was the coldest I had ever heard. There was no reply from Campbell. "And Snake has no need to know about any of this. We need his full cooperation at this point. Just tell him that Naomi was a terrorist spy and was apprehended while sending them a coded message." "Do you expect me to betray a friend? Keep him in the dark?" Campbell objected furiously. "A friend? Are you referring to Snake?" Richard smiled coolly. Do you really think he considers you a friend anymore? He had hit a sore spot. Campbell had no answer. Richard moved in for the kill. You've already lied to him too many times. Against my will, under your threats, Campbell was roaring, but Richard barely seemed to register his anger. Certainly, but that's not an issue. You were, after all, giving him false information and relaying false orders to him of your own accord. Then there's Foxdie. I can almost see Campbell's grinding his teeth in frustration and rage. Do you still have the right to call yourself his friend? There was nothing Campbell could say. Will you cooperate with us? You will cooperate with us, understood? Understood. The transmission ended. Who are the Patriots? Richard looked away towards another direction at my quarry. What are you talking about? Don't BS me. He turned towards me. His gaze was icy. Nothing you need to know about. But by the way, not that I need to remind you, but don't mention to Snake things that don't concern him. And if I do, Richard's stony silence answered my uncompleted question. I was too far into this business, and I suddenly seemed to sense danger everywhere. What do you intend to do with me once this mission is over? Nothing. Don't expect me to believe you. Richard allowed himself a brief, oddly sad smile. I suppose I can't. In the meantime, Snake was itching towards the launch code entry interface. At that point, he received the call from Master Miller. Snake, we need to talk about Naomi Hunter. The Colonel's looking into that. Turn the monitor off. All right, it's off. Mission Control is out of the loop. You want to tell me what this is about? Snake believed that he had switched us off, but I could still hear everything. Radio malfunction? I guess not. Someone had made sure that nothing could get past Mission Control ever. I had a more than a good idea who that someone was, but Master Miller obviously did not. Sorry about that. I didn't want Campbell to overhear. What is this about? Snake repeated. I have a contact in the Pentagon. He told me that a new assassination tool has been recently developed under the DIA's guidance. I looked over at Richard, but he pretended to not notice. Assassination tool? Snake was asking. Snake, have you ever heard of the term Foxdie? I tensed. There was that word again. First Richard, then Campbell, now Miller. It seemed to be a virus that can target specific individuals. I don't know the details, Miller continued. Richard remained expressionless next to me. So, what are you getting at? Snake raised his voice slightly, sounding annoyed by Miller's roundabout methods. They share common features. What shares common features? The deaths. The Arms Tech president and the DARPA chief, or I guess I should say decoy octopus, they both died of what looked like a heart attack, right? Yeah. Well, it seems that a death by Foxdie virus looks like a case of a heart attack. After a moment, Snake spoke up. Are you saying that Naomi was the one who set this up? Snake, think. Did Naomi give you any kind of shot? The nanomachines, Snake murmured. Snake had in fact been injected with nanomachines in an anti-hypothermia compound before the start of the mission. Was Miller suggesting that there was a killing virus in the mix as well? One thing for certain, she's in the best position to perform this kind of sabotage. But we still don't know her motives or objective. What about the Colonel? Snake asked, after a lengthy silence, his tone brooding and full of doubts. I don't know, and I don't think he'll interrogate her yet either. All right, I'll ask him. Once he was off the radio with Miller, Snake called up Campbell. Colonel, any new developments with Naomi? I've just taken her into custody. What? Snake said incredulously. She was sending a coded message to an Alaskan location. I didn't want to believe it, but she's definitely one of the terrorists. Campbell would sound anguished. So this is a lie. This didn't actually happen. This is actually a lie when he tells them in the game. Are you sure? There's very little doubt she's being interrogated right now. What kind of interrogation? I don't want to resort to the force. We don't even have any was it Theopolitan on hand? Let me know if you learn anything. Unaware of the machinations behind this, the machinations behind this latest development, Snake ended the communication. I longed to tell him the truth, but knew that Richard and his men would never allow that to happen. Despite his growing doubts, Snake continued to penetrate deeper into the hangar. He had almost reached the code interface when a call suddenly came in. Snake, can you hear me? It's Naomi. Naomi? Snake exclaimed in surprise. What are you? Richard tensed and leaned forward. I managed to get to another transmitter. The colonel and the others haven't noticed yet. No, Naomi whispered rapidly. Naomi, is it true? What the colonel says? Yes, but not everything I told you is a lie. Some of it was the truth. Her voice was sorrowful. Who are you, really? I don't know. I don't know what my parents looked like even, or what they were called. I bought the name I use, the whole identity with hard cash. Remember I told you why I was so fixated on genes? That was the truth. Because you wanted to know who you were? That's what you said? Yes. I don't know what I am. My ethnic background, age, Naomi. That was the pause before Naomi started speaking again in a rush. I was picked up in northern, was it Rhodesia in the 80s. I was an orphan. Rhodesia? During all the guerrilla warfare? Zimbabwe used to be a British colony. You know, there was a sizable Indian population there then. Maybe that's where I get my color of my skin. But I'm not even sure of that. Naomi, why dwell on the past? If you can't understand who you are now, if you can understand who you are now, isn't that all that really matters? Understand what I am myself. No one could ever understand me, at least of all myself. Naomi's voice was suddenly defiant. I was always searching for myself alone until I met my brother and him. Your brother? Snake asked. Yes, Frank Yeager. What did you say? Snake was taken aback. He was a child soldier, too. He found me almost dead of starvation on the bank of Zimbabwe and feed me his own small rations of food. Child soldiers. It is not rare for children to participate in war as combatants in many of the most conflict-ravaged regions of the world. This is especially true for those developing nations where minor accounts for the majority of the entire population. A harsh regime can and does turn innocent children into the most brutal of soldiers. In many cases, various drugs are used to numb the natural fear response. The result is an obedient killing machine whose bravery marks them out for posting to the front lines of the furious battle and to scouting duties in the minefields. Yes, the man you destroyed is my brother. Frank Yeager, my only family, Naomi said quietly. That's impossible. Gray Fox is your brother? Snake could not hide his perturbation. We managed to survive hell together, all because he protected me. He was everything to me. He was the only witness to my existence and the only one who made me feel like a real human being. Gray Fox brought you to the States? No, we met him in Mozambique. Him. Something seemed to click within Snake. You mean Big Boss? Yes. He led us here, finally made us free. But Frank went with Big Boss back to the wars. And when he came home to me, he was. Naomi broke off. The silence spoke of the smoldering anger, of the irreparable loss. I promised myself that I would get you. You broke my brother. You as good as killed him. That's why I joined Foxhound, because I knew that I would run into you sooner or later. Well, you got your chance now, Snake seemed to be taking all this in stride. He was no doubt accustomed to being the target of the enmity of the others. Yes, I've waited 2 years, just for a chance to kill me. Exactly. 2 whole years waiting for you and no one else, yearning for revenge. It's almost like being in love. You still hate me? I wouldn't say that. There was a trace of hesitation in Naomi's voice. There are still some things about you that I misunderstood. Did you kill your predecessor? The geneticist who was using Gray Fox for his experiments? His. You mean Dr. Clark? No, it was Frank that killed him. I covered up the whole thing and kept my brother safe. An uneasy silence fell. Is the ninja Gray Fox here to kill me? I don't think so. Frank is here to fight you, nothing more. I couldn't make sense of it at all at first, but I think I know now. A kinda duel. He lives only for that, I think. Fox, Snake murmured, as though remembering the man who had once been his comrade. Tell me something, Naomi. He said a short while later. Is it about Fox Die, isn't it? She said in a low, pained voice. It's a retrovirus. Kills only the designated person by first injecting the macrophages. Fox dye is engineered with an oxygen chain that responds only to a specific DNA pattern. The oxygen is what recognizes the target's DNA sequence. Once the recognized oxygen responds, Fox dye repurposes the macrophage's cellular structure to create TNF alpha. Naomi had regained her old calm as she fielded Snake's questions. What does that mean? It's a type of cytosine, a peptide that triggers cell death. The TNF alpha travels through the bloodstream to the heart, where it binds to the receptors of the cardiac cells, and that causes a heart attack. The affected cells undergo a rapid apoptosis, and the owner of that heart dies. Apoptosis. I remember that. Programmed cells. Cell death from the damaged cells. Snake murmured. The tense silence descended once again. Naomi. Yes? I know you programmed me to die. Naomi remained silent. Do I have any time left? Still no answer. Naomi, you have every right to take my life, but I can't die just yet. I still have work to finish. You have to listen. I'm not the one who decided on the use of fox dye. Naomi burst out. Not you? It was part of the mission's plan to infect you with fox dye. I wanted to tell you that. Naomi broke off and suddenly made up her mind to continue. I'm not being honest with you, with myself. Naomi? What I really want to tell you was, Snake, I. Naomi was struggling for words when suddenly a male's voice barked behind her. Freeze! Step away! No, Naomi cried out sharply. She must have been spotted by one of Richard's toughs. I could hear the sound of a scuffle over the radio. Snake! With that last grasp, Naomi faded out of earshot. Naomi! Snake called out, but it was Campbell that answered him. Snake, I can't permit you to communicate with Naomi. What are you talking about? She's officially out of the mission. What did you do with her? How was infecting me part of the mission? Colonel, let me talk to her. I can't do that, Snake. She's been confined. Colonel, you sold me out, didn't you? I could hear the rage in Snake's voice. Don't waste your energy thinking about things you can't change. Campbell said, this voice carefully guarded against any emotion. Stopping Metal Gear is your first priority. Don't forget that. I can't believe Naomi was Gray Fox's foster sister, Richard murmured bitterly. Are you happy? You know who she is now, after all. I wouldn't say that. Richard's expression was complex. She said she wasn't the one who deployed Foxdie. I decided to risk putting out a feeler. Richard said nothing, and that told me everything I needed to know. It was you, wasn't it? Yes. I was taken back by his ready admission. Foxdie was one of my projects. And Naomi was a top-notch professional. The Foxdie research had hit a brick wall when she pitched herself to us. She somehow heard that we were looking for a genetic engineering expert. As soon as she joined the team, the project took off in a major way. Richard paused and then plunged ahead. I assigned her to lead the development effort. When the virus was finally engineered, it was she that named it Foxdie. What I thought was dedication to the work was actually the thirst for vengeance. She didn't let that slip, not once. He murmured ruefully. I knew what his relationship had been with Naomi when I studied his face. You were seeing her. She was using me, he corrected and gave a hollow laugh. At that point, one of his men came tearing over. After an urgent whisper, Richard's face grew grim. What happened? Master Miller wasn't Master Miller. Richard was visibly shaken. What? The man I sent to interrogate Miller just reported in. He found Miller murdered in his home, up in Alaska. Who was it that we were talking to then? This is actually quite interesting. So, it's led to believe that Naomi created Foxdie. I mean, she did. She created it in her way. But we find out that it's actually Richard's project. Yeah. That's actually quite interesting. That it was actually his project all along. And yeah, the whole Miller thing. So Kaz went to go live in Alaska. Who was it we were talking to then? But there was no one who could provide an answer to that question. Around the same time on Shadow Moses, Snake had finally made it past the enemy's defenses and successfully re-entered the launch codes. But something was amiss. As the code was accepted, an alarm was triggered. Launch code entered. An electronic voice intoned, all systems ready. Stand by for missile strike. Snake stared around him, aghast. No! I just overrode the launch authority authorization, he cried. His questions were answered by an unexpected source when a radio call came in. Thank you, Snake. It was Miller, or rather, an imposter who had taken the murdered man's identity. The launch preparations are now complete. Nothing can stop Metal Gear now. Master, what's going on? We were very grateful to you. Not only did you bring the key, you just entered the launch code for us as well. What? You never did get his part of the code. We never did get his part of the code from the DARPA chief. Even Mantis's abilities couldn't break through. And Ocelot managed to kill Anderson off before we could try anything else. As Snake listened in horror, Miller continued. You see, we couldn't launch the missile. And not even a warning shot. We were dead in the water with nothing back up our demands. Master, what are you saying? With the launch code out of our reach, we had to fall back on another plan. We decided to have you work for us, Snake. What? Having decoy octopus impersonate the DARPA chief was a part of it. We were trying to extract information from you, but Foxdie got to him first. Miller said savagely. Are you saying this whole thing was fixed? Snake asked through the clenched teeth. And it was all to get to me to unlock the launch sequence? The terrorist mockingly laugh rung out. Did you think you got this far thanks to your own abilities? Think again. Master, what are you? What about you? Are you a spy? The other continued as though he had not heard Snake's question. But everything is ready for launch now. Once they get a taste of the new warhead, the White House will have hand over the antidote. And they'll have nothing on us anymore, ever again. Have nothing on you? What do they have on you now? The Pentagon's already accomplished what they set out to do with you. It happened right there in that torture chamber. You're the only one who's in the dark. It's not fun, is it, Snake? He sneered. Who are you? I'll tell you if you manage to get to me. Where are you? Very close, Snake. Very close. Campbell suddenly broke in. Snake! That's not Miller! Hello, Campbell. It's a little late for that, the imposter said mockingly. Master Miller's body was discovered at his home. He's been dead for 3 days. We didn't know sooner because the communication was down. According to Mei Ling, the transmission is originating inside that base. Then who are you? You've been talking to me all along, the man responded. Snake. His voice suddenly changed and I knew who it was. So did Snake. Liquid! Snake broke off communications and started to run. Metal Gear had already been activated by the time Snake reached. Dude, the reveal of Snake Liquid being Master Miller is still like so good to me. Like it's still great. The whole thing about it is awesome. Metal Gear had already been activated by the time Snake reached it. Liquid was about to climb into the pilot seat when Snake called out to him, barrel of his Cellcom pointed straight at Liquid. Liquid! Are you going to shoot your own brother? Liquid reminded Languid. Why did you impersonate Miller? He says in the game, why did you impersonate Master? To manipulate you, of course, Liquid said, conversationally, as though the two were discussing the weather. It worked, too. You did exactly what we needed you to do. Snake indignantly was compounded by Liquid's next comment. I'm sure your masters at the Pentagon agree. Why do you keep mentioning them? You don't even question the orders that you're given anymore, Snake? Where's your pride? A warrior, reduced to a pawn, Liquid cited, exaggeratedly. All this stopping the nuke, rescuing the hostages. It's a charade. Charade? Snake was taken back. All the Pentagon wanted was to effect a meeting between us. Liquid explained, obviously enjoying Snake's reaction. That's how the arms tech president and decoy were gotten rid of. Can't be. Actually, it can be. The point was to selectively kill us off and retrieve our extremely expensive genetically engineered corpses, along with Metal Gear. You were sent in by the Pentagon merely as a fox-die vector. Snake was in shock. That's insane. And Naomi, she was working with the Pentagon all along? That's what they thought. But it, but she, but it, but she, it seems, wait, what? But she, it seems? That doesn't make sense. It seems she wasn't quite as soft as they read her to be. Is this a novelization? This is a recapture of the events of Shadow Moses through the eyes of Natasha. So this is a book that she released after the events of Shadow Moses. It's referenced by Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2. That scene where after you fight the Hind D and Raiden questions Campbell and Campbell says, "I don't give a damn what that piece of trash said. Do you get me?" He's referencing this book. What do you mean? I have ears at the DOD. Naomi apparently managed to make some tweaks to the virus right before the mission. Her motives and objectives are unknown. I heard Richard's impatient grunts beside me. Is that what you had Naomi arrested for? To discover why she did what she did? Snake challenge. Very good. It's disappointing that it was nothing more than a run-of-the-mill revenge scheme. But we still don't know what kind of changes she introduced to Foxdie. Liquid fell silent for a moment, then continued. But enough of that. I've already added the Foxdie antidote to my list of demands to Washington. There's an antidote? Snake asked in surprise. There should be. Hunter would be the only one to know, but even that may not be necessary. Why not? You've been successfully infiltrated the facility. You've been infected with the execution virus according to their plan. Octopus and Armstech president died of it for certain. But neither me nor Ocelot, not to mention you, have shown any signs of infection. You're saying there may be a flaw in Foxdie's targeting program? Who knows? But as long as you're healthy, I'm safe. We share the same genetic code after all. So we are twins, yes, but not in the ordinary sense. We're the flip side of a counterfeit genetic coin. Enfants terribles. Liquid's voice grew hoarse with anger. You lucked out. They handpicked all of our father's superior traits for you. Snake was silent. His father, Big Boss, was a part of the past he wanted to leave behind, a past tainted by the crime of petricide. But Liquid was not finished. Everything was undesirable I got. Or should I say that I was everything undesirable, left over from the creation process that was designed to produce you. The only reason I came into being was so that you could be born. How could I be the superior specimen? Oh, but you are. And I'm the dregs. You couldn't begin to understand what it was like starting out my life as a genetic garbage. The anger, the hatred and rage in Liquid's voice shook us and left Snake speechless. But it was me that our father chose, Liquid said slowly and purposefully. Is that why you're obsessed with Big Boss? Some kind of twisted love? Love? Hatred, my brother. He says love. It's hate. He says that in the game. He chose me knowing that I was biologically inferior. Now, I'm about to pay him back for that crime. Liquid laughed, mocking Snake's bewilderment. Could not understand that either. Someone who's got the chance to kill his own father wouldn't. You managed to deprive me even of that revenge. But I will not accomplish. But I will accomplish what our father dreamt of and never achieved. That's how I'll kill him. By surpassing him. Liquid ended his proclamation by leaping into Metal Gear's cockpit. Snake fired a burst from his cellcom, but the bullets ricocheted off Metal Gear's armor. Damn! Snake gnashed his teeth as Liquid called out mockingly from the cockpit. Snake! Couldn't count yourself lucky. You'll get to die by the greatest weapon the world has ever seen. The least I can do for my brother. Metal Gear, already in activation mode, started to stir. A high-pitched noise, like the whine of a turbo engine, begins to sound as Liquid's voice bombed out of an amplifier. I'll give you an advanced showing of what the rest of the world will learn soon. That the 21st century will belong to a devil they don't know. Metal Gear struck that Snake like a living thing. Its state-of-the-art composite armor was virtually impenetrable to all but high-yield explosives like heat, high-explosive anti-tank. But Dr. Emmerich had advised Snake to take out the radome and knock the sensor offline in a bid for survival. Snake struck again and again, but he was fighting a difficult battle, given Metal Gear's immense firepower and agility. Finally, one of Metal Gear's huge feet lashed out towards Snake in a crushing blow. Time to die, Snake, Liquid called out. The foot hit the floor with a deafening clash. Snake, however, had escaped. Someone had pulled him out of the foot's path at the last second. Get out of here, now! The voice was a familiar one. Gray Fox, Snake cried out. The ninja, or rather Gray Fox, launched a fury arc towards Metal Gear, destroying the radome. The tank froze in confusion for a second, and Snake and Fox found cover during the brief lull. Fox, why? Why are you helping me? I'm a captive, Snake. Death is my prison. You're the only one who can release me. Gray Fox replied, his voice clear and sane. Fox, don't involve yourself in this business anymore. Think about Naomi. She's destroying herself trying to avenge you. Yes, Naomi. You're the only one who can stop her, Snake argued. But Gray Fox replied was discouraging. No, I can't. Why not? I'm the one that killed her parents. Gray Fox Stark's words stunned Snake. I was just a child myself, and I couldn't stand to kill her too. I took her with me because it was the only way I could think of asserting the guilt. I raised her to satisfy my half-baked conscience, but she gave me the love and respect I didn't deserve. She called me her brother, Fox. We may look like a happy little family, but I was terrified every time she looked at me in the eyes. That she would see the truth. Tell her for me, will you? Tell her that I'm the one who took her family from her, not you. Many former child soldiers are permanently traumatized by their horrifying war experience. It was possible that Gray Fox's compilations, whether it be taking in his victim's orphan child or returning again and again to the battlefield with Big Boss, had its roots in his childhood scars. There you are, Liquid called it through the Metal Gear speakers. A concentrated volley of Vulcan cannon fire followed the rounds, closing in on Snake and the ninja. It's almost time to finish this, Fox cried. I'll slow it down. Fox! Before Snake could stop him, Gray Fox leaped out into the open and went for Metal Gear. He could hear the roar of Metal Gear's Vulcan cannons. Gray Fox's reinforced skeleton gave him faster reflexes, and he dodged the volley. But the next second, his body had been plucked up by Metal Gear's massive jaw. Fox! Snake shouted, reverberated throughout the hangar. Metal Gear's engine revving loud and Fox's reinforced skeleton cracking audibly. How long will his bones hold out, Snake? Are you going to abandon him? Liquid taunted, but Fox was far from death. A cornet fox is one of the most dangerous animals. Laser fire bursts from Fox's right arm, and Metal Gear's radome exploded. Liquid was now blind, since Metal Gear's cockpit was completely sealed from the outside. They didn't give you a fox rank for nothing, old comrade, but this is where it ends. Liquid unamplified voice called out. He had apparently discarded the cockpit hatch to use his own eyes and ears in lieu of the sensors. The next thing we heard was an explosive crash. Was Gray Fox now under Metal Gear's foot? My fear was confirmed by the ominous and unmistakable sound of Fox's reinforced exoskeleton cracking under the pressure. At the same time, we heard Fox's grasping voice. Finally, I can finally die. And with you as my witness, after Zanzibar land, they took away the fight for me. I wasn't dead, but didn't feel alive. So futile for such a long time, but finally it's over. Fox's voice was down to a whisper now. Snake, we're not just tool for politicians and generals. All I did with my life was fight, but at least it was my choice. Goodbye, Snake. And with a dull crunch, his reinforced skeleton finally gave away. Fox! Snake screamed. Liquid laughed. He was a fool. It was over the moment he begged for death. He grounded Fox's battered corpse underfoot with Metal Gear and then bellowed. Do you get it now? You can't protect anyone, let alone yourself. Die! Metal Gear's Vulcan cannons roared into action. But with all the sensors offline, the fire lacked its previous accuracy. Robbed of his old friend and comrade, Snake gave free rein to his rage. Taking up a Stinger missile launcher, he fired at Liquid, setting exposed his cockpit. It was a direct hit. Even the composite armor could not protect against a shot that penetrated into the cockpit itself. Its piloting systems destroyed. Metal Gear abruptly spun out of control and pitched towards the ground with a deafening screech. A loud explosion followed seconds later. It's so interesting that Liquid thinks he's literally the inferior one, yet this guy survives a helicopter exploding. He's literally in Metal Gear as it explodes. And then he survives the fall on top of Metal Gear. Like, how does he remotely even think he's the inferior one? He survives so much BS. Snake caught in the blast was bodied thrown across the hangar and knocked unconscious. Snake was still out cold. His radio was offline, but we could hear smaller explosions from the wreck of the Metal Gear and the sound of flames greetingly sucking up the leaking fuel. Snake showed no signs of coming around. A few minutes later, a sound of footprints emerged from the general's chaos. It was moving towards Snake. There was a faint murmur. Snake, it's not over yet. it was Liquid's voice. Snake! I yelled into the radio, but Snake did not stir. Isn't there any way to wake him? I asked Richard, but he shook his head. Liquid has reached Snake's side, and to our surprise, picked up Snake's limp body. He started carrying Snake, heading in the direction of Metal Gear's prone form. We listened helpless in a tense silence. It was Snake's battle. There was next to nothing we could do. Liquid had now climbed onto Metal Gear's back, where he carelessly laid Snake down. He apparently planned to simply wait for his adversary to regain consciousness. So, Liquid said. Snake was still out of action. I know you're listening. You have a radio implanted in this one. It was clear that Liquid was talking to us. You think you've pulled off Fox Die. Think again. You're not going to kill me with that thing like that. With a thing like that. Never. The knowledge that he was already infected with the killer retrovirus made no difference to Liquid Snake. It was a force of will that commanded respect. You have no idea how excited I am, knowing that you're still out there. Revenge is a candy that I've been deprived of too many times. The hatred in Liquid's voice was chilling. You patriots. At the moment, Snake let out a groan. He was starting to surface. He's almost ready. Listen, all of you. When I've settled the score with this one, I'm coming after you next. I'm going to end your miserable lives in a way that it'll make even the Reaper's stomach turn. I'll look forward to it, Richard murmured starkly. Snake groaned again. He was apparently awake. Still a light sleeper, huh? Liquid said to Snake conversationally. Liquid, you're alive? You won't be getting rid of me, not as long as you're breathing. Sorry, your insurrection was a bust, Snake commented. Do you think that I'll give up my fight just because we lost Metal Gear? Liquid had lost none of his confidence. Your fight, Snake shot back. What's your real objective here? To make sure the age of warriors comes again. Warriors like us, Snake. That's Big Boss's pet delusion all over again. No, his legacy, Liquid exploded at Snake's words. All throughout the Cold War, during the time of turbulence, the whole world wanted us, gave us our due. We were needed. He fell silent, as if to mourn for the days that were no more. That's all changed. Hypocrisy and fraudulent peace were replacing war. There is a terrible emptiness that comes from losing an arena for your gifts, and the terror that will become a dinosaur, no longer useful. You must know that feels better. You must know that fear better than anyone. Snake had no reply to Liquid's entry. I wonder whether Liquid's words had found their mark. The prototype nuclear warhead will provide me with the leverage to acquire my campaign funds. The funds will make more global acts of terrorism possible. The violent begets violence. And this complacent world will erupt into confusion. Violence, mistrust, and conflict will compound each other and create more hatred. In our sphere of usefulness, the ecosystem of war will grow larger and larger. As long as human beings are around, there will always be war. Somewhere in the world, Snake argued, there's no need to create more. It's a question of balance, Snake. Or question of balance, Liquid responded in a flash. The balance that our father fought for. And that's the only reason you need to do this? It's more than enough for me. And for you, too. That's not the kind of thing I want. Not now, not ever. Liquid laughed at Snake's dodging refusal. You're lying. Why do you think you're here? You've been lied to, betrayed by your own team. But you still wouldn't abandon the mission. Why? Snake couldn't answer. I'll tell you why, Liquid continued. Because you enjoy it. The thrills. And the kills. No, that's not. Snake was struggling for words, but Liquid cut in. Are you going to deny it? You've killed dozens of my men today. But that was, as Snake faltered. Liquid laughed in contempt. Every time you delivered the kill shot, your face brightened up. No! There's no reason for you to deny your own killer instinct. That's what we were created for, after all. What were we created for? It was all the encouragement Liquid needed to reveal the details of a secret project known as the Les Enfants Terribles. It was in 1970. It was 1970s. The U.S. had not yet awakened from the nightmare of the Vietnam War when a plan was hatched by key figures in the government to artificially create the ideal soldier. The man selected to serve as the genetic template for the project was the most famous living mercenary of the time, Big Boss. Big Boss was, however, incapable of reproducing as a result of past war injuries. As a result, his body cells were harvested for a cloning attempt. In addition to exercising to the existing analog cloning protocol, the program incorporated the so-called super baby technique. The super baby technique involves carefully dividing the fertilized eggs whose nucleus had been switched with that of the donor cells. The result is usually 8 zygotes, I don't know what that is, which are then implanted into a surrogate uterus. 6 of the embryos are strategically aborted over a period of time in order to boost the growth of the remaining 2. We started out as octuplets, Liquid reflected. Octuplets? Snake was clearly taken back. 6 of our brothers were killed so that we could be created. We've been causing death and destruction even before we breathed outside air. That left the 2 of us. The 2 Zeogites that shared the same DNA. But there was one more sacrifice to be made. One of the embryos was engineered to manifest the full potential of its genetic makeup, and at the expense of the other one, which was purposefully relegated to the bottom of the curve. You are what you are, Solid Snake, thanks to the death and deprivement of your brothers. Liquid surveyed the stunned Snake and smiled. But if you think that I'm the only sibling you have left, think again. What? The genome soldiers. They were bred from our father's DNA too. The only difference is they were not analog. They're not analogs of him like we are. Liquid went on to tell an astonishing story. The Human Genome Project concluded late last century. The Les Enfants Terribles project and the intensive study of Big Boss's genetic samples that led researchers to many of the secrets of the so-called soldier genes. The isolated traits for initiative, discipline, and tactically desirable characteristics had been secretly integrated into the genetic structure of the next generation Special Forces soldiers. All those commandos you murdered All those commandos you murdered on this base were your brothers. The genome soldiers? Incomplete creatures, certainly. Forcibly grafted in with a piece of Big Boss's genetic sequence, but still family. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the Joniba um, people in Final Fantasy VII. But still family. They share in the family dysfunction too. Their lives are also cost someone dearly. How so? Human experiments. Liquid hissed angrily. According to Liquid, the military had secretly started treating its men with the soldier gene when the 1991 Gulf War broke out. The unexplained Gulf War syndrome amongst the returning personnel was apparently one of the gene therapy unfortunate side effects. That means that those Gulf War babies born to vets are, Snake asked, stunned. Exactly. Our earliest siblings. And the next generation special forces were the finished product? Finish? Liquid sneered. Hardly. They're defective. We all are. On a path to extinction, if you will. What did you say? Have you ever heard of the law of the biological asymmetry? There is a natural tendency towards the left and right asymmetry. On the other hand, species that run out of genetic diversity and are on the path to extinction start showing complete symmetry. That's what's happening to the genome soldiers. And to us. Snake stared at Liquid in a bleak shock. Every one of us is dying on the genetic level. The question is when the decline will start. That's why I needed our father's body to get some answers. So I guess he's talking about the rapid aging that they all go through. I assume that's what he's talking about here. You expect me to believe, Snake asked, that you demand Big Boss's body so you could save yourself and the genome soldiers? Siblings start out life competing, but they always band together against outside threats. Why do you think that is? Liquid waited for Snake to respond, and the latter said nothing. It's because they share your genes. And by helping them, the chances of your genes making it to the next generation are bettered. Natural selection favors nepotistic species. The instinct to help our own kind is an inherent trait. Our DNA is ordering us to. Your DNA is ordering you to help these genomes, commandos, Snake said skeptically. But Liquid agreed in a reverential tone. No one can go against their genetic destiny. We were born for the sole purpose of recreating our father's DNA in its based and most ideal incarnations. I will follow my destiny and surpass it. I can break my own biological curse, and that's why I'm going to kill you, Solid Snake. He spoke quietly before it was clear that he meant every word. He suddenly called out in a different tone. Look behind you. Meryl. Snake exclaimed. Meryl was apparently lying behind Snake. I guess that she had been. Wait a minute. I guess that she had been brought here before Liquid had carried Snake onto the roof. Is she alive? I wouldn't know. She was definitely breathing a few hours ago. Though, she kept calling your name over and over again, Liquid said coolly. Meryl. She's a fool for falling in love to a man who doesn't even have a name. I do have a name. No, you don't. And no past, no future. That's the way it is for us, Liquid shouted. The only thing we do have are instructions written in our father's genomes. Liquid, let Meryl go. After we settle things between us. We're just about out of time. Are you talking about Foxdie? No. The Pentagon. It seems that the DoD came to a decision when they heard about Metal Gear's destruction. They're not even interested in a Bonder report at this point. Ask your Shadow Campbell if you want. He likes to listen, doesn't he? Snake raised Campbell on the radio. Colonel, can you hear me? I'm here. What's the Pentagon up to? You better tell me, Colonel. The defense secretary personally take control of the mission. He's on an AWACS heading your way. For what? An airstrike, Campbell replied bitterly. What? That's not even the bad news. A bomber just took off from Glena's Air Force Base. It's carrying B-6113 surface-piercing missiles. Christ, Metal Gear's already been destroyed. Snake raised his voice. Doesn't the defense secretary know that? He knows, but because Naomi's betrayal, he no longer has any faith in Foxdie's effectiveness. Your taking out Metal Gear means that the threat of nuclear strike has been removed, and he's free to ensure a direct and complete cover-up of the whole affair by blowing up all the evidence and everyone who knows anything sky high with a nuclear bomb. Snake finished angrily. But Campbell's next words were unexpected. Don't worry, Snake. I'll halt the airstrike. What? I may be technicality, but I'm still the field commander for the mission. If I call in an order to halt the strike, it should weaken enough havoc. It should wreak enough havoc on the chain of command to buy you some time. Use it to get out of there. Richard called one of his men over and muttered an order. There was little doubt that it was for Campbell's arrest. Snake and Campbell, ignorant of the room full of ears who were listening to on their exchange, were still talking. Colonel, you know what would happen. You know what would happen to you. It's all right, Snake, but you should know something. There was a top-secret internal investigation being conducted into Foxhound these past few months. Merrill was transferred out to Shadow Moses the day of the insurrection as a hostage to ensure my cooperation. What a... Snake broke out in disgust. Now go, Snake. Are you sure about this? You'll lose everything you've worked for. I'm sure. In this way, I can keep the things that are really important. And that I would otherwise lose. Colonel. All right. I'm putting in an order to halt the strike. This is the point of no return. What the hell? Campbell gasped. It seemed that Richard's men were trying to restrain him. The only thing we could hear over the radio were gunshots and unintelligible noise. It was once again a helpless specter of a life or death struggle. Mei Ling burst in abruptly, as though she had seized the microphone. Snake! Mei Ling, what happened to the colonel? I don't believe this. Tell me what's going on. Snake, the colonel. Mei Ling's voice was at a loss in the shower of static before she could reveal more. Instead, an unfamiliar male voice started to speak. This is Jim Houseman, Secretary of Defense. Roy Campbell has been relieved of duty. Let me talk to Colonel Campbell. He's been arrested for comprising with national security. He'll be charged with treason. That's insane. No, it was Roy Campbell who was insane if he truly believed that he had any real say in the mission. You. Snake was seething, but Houseman went on to nonchalantly. The nuclear strike will go forward as planned. The sea will take care of what little there is left. It's what the president wants. So this is an executive order? The presidency of the United States is a very, very busy job. Let's just say that I took full responsibility for this strike. How are you going to explain to the media why you dropped a nuke on American soil? Don't worry. There's a cover story ready. A band of terrorists took over Shadow Moses facility and were extremely careless with their nuclear missiles. You'll be killing your own genome commandos. All the researchers, too. Donald is already dead, Houseman suddenly said with a genuine sorrow in his voice. So you didn't plan on killing the DARPA chief after all, Snake asked. He was my closest friend. And soon, and the rest of the poor bastards stranded here aren't. So the hell with them. Is that it? That depends. If you transfer the contents of the optic disc over to me, there may be room for negotiations. What disc? Snake feigned ignorance, but Houseman was not so easily pulled off. The disc that contains the full exercise data. Donald was supposed to personally bring it back. I don't have it. That's unfortunate, Houseman said calmly. The fact remains that the two of you are a liability. You belong to an age no one cares to go back to, and you have the potential to needlessly embrace us. And you have the potential to needlessly embarrass this great nation. No, you can't be permitted to ever leave that island. Take the time until the airstrike to catch up. Then rest in peace, and you are a ghost of the Cold War after all. The transmission ended. So there's no way out for either of us. I heard Liquid laugh as he approached Snake. We'll settle the score before the cavalry arrives. Snake rose to his feet. You've taken everything from me, Liquid said, and I will reclaim it all, including my rightful biological heritage, right here. The two snakes closed in on one another. The final battle was about to begin. Snake and Liquid had engaged each other in a fierce hand-to-hand combat. But Richard had other things to attend to. He had one of his men open a radio channel. Yes, what is it? I realized I was surprised that the person he had called was none other than the Secretary of Defense, Jim Houseman. An airstrike was an unwise decision. Richard sounded displeased. With a nuclear-armed stealth bomber airborne, a complete cover-up is no longer an option. They are not happy with this. It's the only way to destroy the evidence. The results will bear out the correctness of my decision. There will be no results. I've already aborted the airstrike. How dare you? Houseman started to roar, then suddenly petered out. He no doubt had remembered the powers that be that stood behind Richard. What do you intend to do then? He asked with a barely suppressed rage. There's another viable way to salvage the situation. Make me take the fall? I don't think so, Houseman voice shook with fury. Richard sighed extravagantly. You don't think so, it seems, Mr. Secretary? That Colonel Campbell is not the only one who truly believes that he had any real say in the mission? What are you saying? I heard the sound of a scuffle on the other end. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Get your hands off me. Houseman had apparently been restrained. It was exactly the same scenario that had played out during Campbell's arrest. You have several choices, Richard explained with something resembling pity. It's up to you to which ending this particular story has. I myself would suggest a quieter retirement from public life. You'll pay for this, Ames. I swear to God. Houseman spat out as he struggled violently against his captors. Personally, I don't condone rough measures. I hope you'll come to the same decision, Richard ended the call. The transmission from Shadow Moses was still intact. Liquid's dying screams tore through the speakers. Looks like things are wrapping up nicely over there, Richard murmured. Richard cleared all the personnel out of the study. We were now alone. I could hear Snake and Meryl over the wires. It seemed that he had succeeded in rescuing her in time. Now the question is, what am I going to do with you? Richard said as he turned away from the radio. The time had come for me to make my move. I walked up to my computer. This machine has been recording everything that went on in this study and relaying it out to a remote location. Once there, the data was immediately backed up on an optical disc. It was no bluff. It was just a more covert version of a real-time remote conferencing system. Because of my work, I frequently must acquire information from such unsavory types of black market arms dealers and mafia members who specialize in petroleum smuggling. The recordings were my standard insurance policy. I've already sent a message to the collection administrators. He'll give the disc to my media contact if he can't get in contact with me by a certain time. That had been the mail I'd secretly sent from my PDA earlier. If anything happens to me, the contents of the disc will be all over the world. But Richard was unfazed. I started to feel apprehensive as he calmly lit another cigarette. You mean this disc? He took out a shining optical disc from his jacket pocket and slid it into my PC drive. A few clicks away on the mouse and the playback started. I stared at the slightly grainy footage, horrified. The audio seemed overly loud in the silent room. You should be hearing from him soon. You're clear on how to use the radio? Richard's voice was raspy in the playback, but it was definitely the data I had secretly collected and sent out. How? You shouldn't underestimate me, Richard said, as he ejected and pocketed the disc. Everything in this house has been vetted and monitored since the operation started. Nothing goes in and out without my knowing about it, including electronic signals. That email you sent from the bathroom never got to its destination. He'd seen right through me. With the realization, I felt strength leaving my body. The game was up. But even if you had managed to get this data out into the world, that wouldn't have guaranteed your safety. No one would have believed yet another conspiracy theory, least of all the press. Your people would have made sure of that, I'm sure. Instead of answering, Richard stubbed out his cigarette and slid his right hand inside his jacket. There was an awkward bulge there. In the clean line of his tailored jacket, it was where he kept his gun holstered. Cold sweat trickled down my back. I was slowly backing away from Richard, and I did not realize the fact until my back hit the wall. There was no way out. Are you prepared to kill me? Are you really prepared to kill me? I could not hide the tremor in my voice. You should know the answer to that. He said quietly, looking me straight in the eye. Then he pulled his hand out from under his jacket, and I instinctively shut my eyes. But even after what felt like an eternity, the muffled shot and the pain I was expecting didn't come. I wearily opened my eyes and saw what was in his hand. It wasn't a gun, but a disc. Everything you ever wanted to know about Foxdie. Richard walked up to me and placed the disc in my hand. As I said, a recording of what took place in this room won't guarantee your safety. There's no solid proof. Just talk. It can easily be denounced as a fabricated and cover-up story. But the Foxdie data is a different story, he continued. This disc contains everything about that project, from its origins to the names of every individual involved. As long as you have this as insurance, they won't be able to touch you. Why, Richard? He didn't answer my question. You'd better get out of here quickly. Your car is just out back. What about you? That's not something you need to worry about. But you don't need me, Natasha, and I have things to take care of. Why are you doing this? I asked again. You'll figure it out someday. Do what you have to do, all right? He suddenly held me close and put his lips on mine. As we broke apart after a long kiss, he whispered in my ear, I wanted to do this again just one last time. Then he gently eased me away. Now go. Hurry. There was gravity in his voice that allowed only one response, and I nodded and sped out the room. That was the last I ever saw Richard Ames. After I fled from California, I went into hiding. There has been no sign of pursuit for now. The terrorist incident on Shadow Moses Island came to a conclusion with the destruction of Metal Gear and the deaths of Liquid Snake. The United States government, however, has not yet officially acknowledged the incident. The roster of the dead include Liquid Snake, Psycho Mantis, Sniper Wolf, Decoy Octopus, and Vulcan Raven. Revolver Ocelot's body was never recovered, but his personal file was closed with a notation, missing in action. Foxhound had in effect been decimated. The survivors from the Next Generation Commandos unit were all removed to the Pease FAB in New Hampshire. Absently from training, as far as I know, they remain prisoners there to this day. The government has repeatedly denied allegations of genetically engineering super soldiers, and the rumors that the research continues remains persistent. The death of Donald Anderson, the DARPA chief, and Kenneth Baker, the arms tech, ended the development of a new Metal Gear. The Metal Gear Rex unit itself had been all but completely under Hal Emmerich's leadership. By my source at Lawrence Livermore, indicated that the railgun warhead delivery system had not been fully operational. Apparently, there had been some serious issues with the railgun's targeting accuracy. This was no doubt the reason Baker had entrusted Snake with the exercise data, and Jim Houseman, the Secretary of Defense, had so aggressively pursued its whereabouts. The data is now lost, and the development program has been closed down. I dare to dream that the new nuclear delivery system will never see the light of day. A few days after the incident, I heard on the news that Houseman had shot himself. The suicide was attributed to a temporary nervous breakdown related to job stress. Supporting statements from family and subordinates were widely aired. The airstrike order from Shadow Moses was glossed over as an unfortunate evidence of late defense secretary's unraveling mental state. I remember Houseman's words from the final hours of the mission. I thought I knew what had really happened. He had refused to take the fall and paid for the defiance with his life. The record of Shadow Moses incident and then Fox data discs that Richard gave me are still under my vigorant guard. The Fox Die program data covers Naomi's careful analysis of unauthorized reconfigurations she had made to the virus. The information showed that Snake was indeed one of the targets of the deadly retrovirus, but the incubation period had been changed to a wildcard value. Even Naomi herself did not know when the virus would awaken within Snake. It must have been the best revenge she could think of, condemning him to live in this fearful limbo. Colonel Roy Campbell was released after the defense secretary's own arrest and is once again enjoying his retirement. Mei Ling also made it safely out of the mission and is back in academia. Dr. Hal Emmerich did not return to Arms Tech following his rescue from Shadow Moses. His whereabouts are unknown, but there is some indications that he made his way to England where he has family members. Snake and Marrow appear to have successfully fully made it off Shadow Moses Island. I could, however, find no traces of them. I hope that the same is true for those who had an interest in seeing them silenced. Naomi Hunter was formally taken into custody after the incident conclusion. 3 weeks later, she was undergoing debriefing in a certain facility. She escaped. She has not been heard of since. Officials were closed-mouthed about the circumstances of the escape, but inquiries into other questions incited the fact that someone had broken Naomi out of the base. I knew only one person who could have breached the base's tight security and successfully led someone to freedom. And then there was the matter of Richard Ames. I called in a favor and had an inquiry made to the DIA about one of Major Richard's aims. The DIA responds that there was no DIA personnel fitting that name and description. Buying my safety and freedom had been a costly act for Richard. It was then that I decided to go public with what I knew. By exposing the conspiracy, I may be putting myself in renewed danger, but I am through with being a spectator. An objective bystander. The powerlessness I felt watching Snake's solitary war on Shadow Moses has been a bitter wake-up call. This time, I'm determined to wake up. I'm determined to make a stand. This is my war. Now, to tell the truth about what happened on that island. This is my responsibility and privilege as a survivor, and a cause for which I am prepared to give my life. There it is. Hey! We did it. It was a nice read. There was some nice stuff in this. Like we don't ever learn what happens to Jim Houseman in Metal Gear Solid 1 or Metal Gear Solid 2. He was silenced. He was silenced and killed. Yeah. We get closure on that. And I'm more interested about her talking about how she knew who would break Richard out of the base. Is it Richard who broke Naomi out of the base? Is that what she's referring to? Because that's what I'm referring to. But it's kind of weird because she says, I knew only one person who could have breached the base security. But then she goes on to start talking about Richard unrelated to that, which makes me think it's not him. But I guess it had to have been Snake. I don't know. Who broke her out? But this was pretty cool. It also confirms that the Meryl ending is canon, right? I mean, Meryl dies in the other ending, but Meryl and Snake get off the base. We get to hear, Campbell got released from his arrest. We got to hear that it was Ames who canceled the bombing of the stuff and all that. Like this was pretty cool. There's a lot of information in here related to like the backing of Metal Gear Solid 1. Like how Campbell and stuff was going on. Who was like it was Ames or Ames and some other people that were behind Foxdie being a part of Metal Gear in Metal Gear 1. So this was a nice read.